Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Superbly Said podcast. This is episode 4, and we have a special guest, Mel, who is one of our members at iSpeak. We will go through some phrases and we will answer some questions as we do on our own platform, and you'll be able to tune in to what we discuss here as we answer the questions. So the first expression is I turned a corner. To turn a corner. It's to indicate overcoming a significant challenge or to make notable progress after a difficult period. Whether it's in your life or career, you can turn a corner. So the question is, describe a moment in your life or career when you turned a corner. What challenge did you overcome and what did you learn from that experience? So Mel, do you want to go ahead and share a little bit about your life?
Yeah, sure. Where do I start? Because I encountered so many challenges, especially after relocating to Australia. So where shall I start? But I think everybody listening to this podcast is definitely English learner. So, and I'm one of English learners. From that perspective, I think I would say I still have a fear of speaking English, to be honest.
What was it? Was there a time when you thought, "Wow, I've definitely turned the corner in terms of I'm definitely at another stage or another level in my English learning journey"? And did you ever have a moment when you realized that?
Quite recently, because recently I sat for an IELTS academic exam. So to tackle that such a difficult exam, I had to prepare for it, and I had to face my speaking every part of English language itself. And then I met so many friends and other peers, and then realized, okay, my English is not so bad as I thought.
When did you feel that your own inner voice saying, "Oh, my English is not so bad"? When did you feel that? Do you remember a moment when you were speaking with your friends? Was there a particular phrase that you said, or?
Especially, on your platform is one of my experiences when I felt, oh, my English is not so bad. I could communicate it. Of course, spoken English is different from writing academic English. But when it comes to speaking English, because speaking was the most biggest part of my fear as an English learner.
So when you were conversing with the other participants?
Right. So some people even kindly said to me, "Oh, you speak so clearly," or "Wow, I thought I have a distinctive Japanese accent." But some people gave me a compliment. And of course, English teachers gave me a compliment to encourage me to do more. But having a positive feedback from other peers was such a encouraging for me.
Nice one.
Yeah, it's quite random because I'm living in Melbourne now. I have a lot of chance to meet locals and other foreigners who speaks English as a second language like me.
In Melbourne, I suppose people take it for granted that if you're there, you're going to be speaking English. So they don't suppose that you've actually lived there for a short time, and they don't know that you've learned it as a second language after having spent most of your life not in Australia. So because there are so many people from all over the world who have grown up in Australia on there, I guess that's why you wouldn't know. They wouldn't know, and they wouldn't be able to give you proper feedback.
Yeah, also some of my previous colleagues told me, because I quite recently relocated to Melbourne, despite the fact, she said my is not so bad. So everybody, most of my friends, co-workers moved to Melbourne more than 20 years ago. They're finishing master degrees and then start working in a corporate world. So those people experience more difficulties than I experienced. So, yeah. Yeah, I think every chat helped me, shaped me today. But
Fantastic.
other English learner.
What were the
Yeah,
challenges
it's
while learning the language? When did you ever feel like, oh my, this is like, when am I going to get to, get through this tunnel? And was there a moment before seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, some challenges?
I had some sort of epiphany last year also. Well, I realized that my fear stem from the public speaking, speaking in an authoritative way. That's also the part of the fear of speaking English, because I used English. I had to lead my team in a business setting, but it doesn't necessarily the English language itself. You need a deep authoritative voice, and you need a command presence. So if you are a leader, native just because being a native speaker doesn't necessarily mean you're a good leader and you're a good public speaker.
Wow, that is very
You know what I mean?
You're right. In my own case as well, like I learned Italian, and I'm thinking about how I would be able to communicate myself. It would definitely depend on the form or the shape and the actual almost physical way that I present myself in those languages. It would definitely affect the way that the message is carried to those who are listening. So I can't even really imagine, because I haven't communicated in those languages to a team so much. Yeah, so it's that definitely seems like a challenge.
Yeah, there was a challenge, and especially soon after relocating to Melbourne, without any qualification, any academic record, any working experience here in Australia, I dived into the corporate world. That was hard. Just still rewarding, fulfilling.
For sure, for sure. Well, that's definitely turning a corner to get involved professionally using a second or third language. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And then I couldn't make an excuse, oh, English is my second language, because I worked in Australia, and the company was a US headquartered company, and English is, of course. Yes. And then, I also had, for the first time in my life, I felt my first language was useless. But this is not the case, of course. But that was a bit difficult time. Maybe one side of culture shock, broadly speaking. Probably everybody feel some similar feeling at some point.
With a reflection on your own language, you mean your own mother tongue?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some identity, because I had to use English at work, of course, and then initially I thought, oh, that's a great opportunity for me to make money and learn English at the same time. I thought that was a great opportunity, but reality is my identity is Japanese, and without using a Japanese language, their cultural aspect, it's really tough.
Yeah, I think language is a big one, and I mean, my name here on the podcast is Maverick. My name, my English name is John, but my actual name, my Korean name, the first name that I had, when I was born, and when my parents gave me a name, it was Do Won. My Korean name is Do Won, and the thing is, we adopted new names, or we were given new names when we became when I moved schools in Australia. In the first school that I went to, at the age of 7, my name was still Do Won. But when we moved schools, we actually moved across the city, and my mom, this is my memory. My brother has a different memory, but my mom said to me and my brother, "Okay, David or John?" And my brother said, "Yeah." My brother said David, and so I just got the rejected name of John. And maybe
Good choice.
that's why I,
Good choice.
yeah, without a choice. But I was happy to do it. I didn't, obviously, as a kid, I didn't really know one thing from another. But I've taken on this name. This name is, yeah, I've become one with the name John. But I do still find it as like some kind of, I still feel inferior. Like it's a hegemonical structure to be invited into or assimilated to the culture. It's not just the language, but even to the point of my identity being affected by the culture which we adapted to. It's definitely a submissive state.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen much anymore in Korea. Koreans don't generally adopt English names as children anymore. They used to. But it's now as a matter of choice. People do so on their own if they wish. I know some people who have created names for themselves, and it's one's own choice, not something that the parents do in order to fit in. That's it. That's something that I've noticed as a trend recently. And right now, now I'm at the point of no return. Maybe I can go back. Actually, it is ultimately, we do have the autonomy for it, but I feel like I'm now wedded to this name, John, and it's definitely shaped me. And the language itself now is the way that I think. I used to pray in Korean up until probably my teenage years or later. Whereas my thinking had already changed to English for a long time. Yeah, so now I think in English, and I do feel, and I still believe that thinking or having the ability to express oneself or to think or to process information in another language is helpful. It's helpful on a deep level of being actually in a positive way of interpreting self-doubt. You can have different perspectives on the same information. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So it's a good thing and somewhat negative in terms of, our identity has been kind of disrupted, or we've been not necessarily destabilized, but we've had to accommodate this newness to our identity. But there are some interesting positive outcomes and ultimately something good for the world, I feel, because now we are communicating in English, for example.
Yeah. Wow. Do you remember the first time you got your English name, John? How do you remember? How it felt?
I don't remember, actually. I don't remember.
7.
That's what. Yeah, I don't remember when I first went to school and I said, I'm John. It became so quickly attached into my own sense of identity.
But at age of 7, I guess you already have your sense of yourself. So it must be a bit of adjustment to say, oh, John is my name.
You know what? Yeah, I say this. I remember saying to my friends, like, I turned the corner from an academic point of view when I was about 15. And before
15,
that,
okay.
Yeah. So I think it took me about 7-8 years to adapt to the English language. Although I was already communicative, I was not processing information at the level that I would have if I was still speaking and processing everything in Korean. It took 7 years.
Wow, that's...
Yeah, I think it's to catch up. Yeah, that's what I believe. And so that means that even in terms of understanding my name, understanding my I guess presence in the world, I was very much an observer. I was almost like a non-expressive person. Even though I was getting about enjoying life, I wasn't reflecting very deeply, and it took me maybe that's just normal, but I felt like I was stunted in my development because the brain spent so much time accommodating a new language. Perhaps that's how I feel.
Wow.
Back it. I don't really have too many memories. I'm just observing and just taking everything in.
Oh, because sometimes when I worked in Tokyo, vast majority of my colleagues have experience growing up in the US, UK, Australia. So most of them are Japanese, but they use English as an almost native level. So some of them really first language is English. So that I worked in a very interesting environment in Tokyo for nearly 15 years. But unlike my colleagues, I was quite minority group who haven't experienced international experience. I grew up in ancient capital Kyoto. Maybe you've heard of it. I grew up. I lived in my hometown until 27 when I have to move to Tokyo for my work. And still at that time, my parents and my family itself, it's very conventional, traditional family.
Yeah, fair enough. I mentioned very briefly in a previous conversation that I dated a Japanese woman, and she was from Kyoto. We met in Italy, and she's originally from Kyoto, but I'm not sure where else she studied, but she did tell me something about Kyoto people, that they are revered or feared in Japan. I don't know if she said revered. She said feared. They are feared in Japan, and I interpret it as revered. So what would you say? Is it true that Kyoto people have a certain aura about them? Like respected and...
yeah, because it has thousands of history.
Right. So everyone from Kyoto has a certain something about them. Because is that right? Like among Japanese people, the way that Japanese people look at Kyoto people, they look at them with great esteem and honor, like as if somebody was a royal. Not to that extent necessarily, but it's a positive.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, I think the richness of culture is one of the aspects, I guess. Right. Because it's former capital of Japan. Now capital is Tokyo, but it used to be Kyoto. But definitely I feel the people who was born and raised in Kyoto have some pride. I would say, what's the right thing?
I reckon it's an internal reflection then. Oh, right, okay. So, but it is. Do you think it's validated by? It's still verified by reactions or by the internal thoughts of the people in the other prefectures, or do you think it's actually a Kyoto mindset and it's just a reflection?
Yeah, definitely. There is
both.
I think the communication style is different and the culturally different.
Oh, right.
I can make analogy. If you say Asian language or Asian culture is more reserved, let's say Japanese, Koreans, Chinese at school, we are taught to be quiet when teacher speak in the class. But in the Western culture, it doesn't necessarily the case, isn't it? So it's more authoritarian, but versus authoritative. In Asian country, I think a similar analogy. So, and for me, growing up in Kyoto, moving to Tokyo, I felt, okay, the people in Tokyo is so direct. Sometimes I found it rude because they express everything. But in my hometown, people often use only positive words, even describe a negative thing. Word choice is different.
I understand. That is so interesting. So I suppose Kyoto is like the kernel or the pure Japan, or it's the one that really preserves the old traditions of Japan. And
yes, yeah. So that's why even more difficult for me to adapt the English way of saying or doing or acting.
Yeah. we applied to a Japanese accelerator to support companies that wanted to work with sports teams. Like we wanted to bring in sports athletes to use our platform, and we thought, oh wow, this Japanese organization is trying to match startups with sports teams. So we applied, and we were rejected at the end. But the way that we received the email was, we have gone, basically to summarize, they said we have reviewed all applications, and the final results have come out. Thank you, and have a good day. So, you know, I knew that the Japanese way was like, I can interpret that. As saying, okay, so we weren't successful. But that's only because of probably my ex telling me about how to interpret things. So when a Japanese person says, like if you say, hey, do you want to meet for dinner tomorrow? And the Japanese person says to you, tomorrow. It already means...
Yeah, I already rejected. Yeah.
Yeah, so I said, okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so if they don't say yes outright, then, you know, you have to kind of read between the lines. And I knew that, but that email went out to other international startups. So the international startups, the other ones who were not familiar with this method and this way, then inquired as to what the result was. So they had to send another clarifying email saying, you were rejected, unsuccessful, in the most polite way as possible. That's what I remember. Wow.
Yeah, so
Totally is another level.
yeah, that's why in a corporate Australian environment, it's really hard for me to say the negative things in such a direct way. It's a way out of my comfort zone, not just language-wise, and more emotionally. Yes. I can't say it's such a rude thing.
And how have you adapted? Do you think you've made a transition? Have you been able to just take on that new role and just accept it and you know, change the way that you behave? Are you able to do that?
Yeah. But I try to, but still I'm between a transition period. But it doesn't come naturally to me.
With practice, do you think it's changing? Do you think you are able to accept that, or willing to accept that?
Yes, as long as I live in Australia, I have to adopt it. It's so...
For sure.
Yeah, and then the funny thing is, from my point of view, you know, what I learned from my working experience so far is be the loudest person in the room. Whatever you're talking about, the quality of your comment doesn't really matter. Just talk. Be the loudest person. But that's quite opposite from my native culture, because in Japan, if your comment is not valuable enough, you shouldn't steal other people's time. You have to show respect other people's time. But so that's why the being quiet is one way to show respect to others. But in the Western world, or I would say at least in corporate Australia, so far from my standpoint of view, if I was in a silence in a meeting, people assume I didn't contribute at all. So they don't really care. Yeah, they don't really care English language level. That's a big change.
Yeah, that is a big change. I mean, on a very fundamental aspect of behavior, just speaking and expressing oneself in the presence of others. I think it's you were saying that it was a matter of necessity, like it was a sink or swim situation. You actually had to do that.
Yeah, I had to. Yes. Yeah, there was no time to think about my pronunciation and grammar. I had to say something.
Yeah, well done. It's amazing. Wow. And do you think now when you go back to Japan, or when you speak with Japanese people, that that new behavior, that you do express yourself more in English comes out also when you speak Japanese, or do you adapt straight back to your Kyoto character?
Yeah, if I speak Japanese, I instantly come back to my old character.
It's interesting.
Because I think, yeah, language and culture are so intertwined. I think I have two personalities. Speaking.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
I think so, yeah. I've seen it in myself, but also when I watch YouTube videos, there's a famous YouTuber who is in Japan, is Japanese, and he interviews people who are half Japanese. Like their parents are one side Japanese or one side Japanese. And sometimes he asks the interviewees to speak in Japanese after having spent a long time speaking in English on the platform. They then switch to Japanese, and their whole demeanor changes, you know. The way that they express themselves completely changes, not only in the language, but in their mannerisms. They become much more reserved, as you said, very quickly, like almost in an instant.
Wow. So
In my case, yeah, with Korean, I don't know too much. I'm not that self-reflective, but I think I've been told that my voice changes when I speak Korean. Like it actually changes tone, like
going up
pitch.
or down?
It becomes deeper. Yeah, when I speak Korean, it becomes deeper. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. When I speak Japanese, my voice goes up
Because of higher pitch.
because I think because as a woman, it's a more polite way to speak, especially in a business setting.
Understood. Wow, interesting.
I think it's to speak English, to pronounce the English sounds, to me, it's so muscle intense. But when I speak my first language, I don't really have to move my mouth. So yeah, that's another reason why I started using your platform, because I have to train my muscle on my face, not just the cognitive aspect of remembering a word. Not that way. It's like a muscle training. You have to use your mouth. Just even the singing a song or shadowing while listening to a podcast. But every day you have to use a muscle.
Yeah, that's so true. It's something that's quite neglected, I feel. But it can be useful, especially shadowing as a way to practice at home, practice on one's own.
I think I do a lot shadowing. Just like the sound of, but you don't have to.
Oh no, because I'm learning French. I'm learning French and I'm learning Arabic. Yeah, you know, my girlfriend is Tunisian. And I
didn't know that.
All right, yeah, my girlfriend is Tunisian. She lives in Paris, and she's yeah, and I've been learning Tunisian for a number of years now, but I still have difficulty pronouncing some of the consonants. You know, they have that's a vowel. Yeah, they have a special vowel, which is an adapted, well, not adapted. It's just a different A sound, like coming from the back of one's throat. And
glottal sounds.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not sure if it's glottal or if it's actually considered a throat sound. In any case, it's something that I have to consciously manipulate with my mandible or lifting up my palate. I have to think about it, you know, because I forget to do that. I replace it subconsciously with just the normal A sound, just the English sound. So
that's required easier for you. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So I think shadowing, that is repeating. I think we're talking about the same thing, like repeating immediately after the consonant that is heard, well, not consonant, the sound that is heard, the syllable that is heard, to repeat after the whatever is said straight away. So I think I need to do that more with Tunisian Arabic. I do listen to a lot, but I've never tried shadowing in Tunisian Arabic.
I think, and then until I prepared for IELTS, until quite recently, I didn't even realize that I need physical practice. But speaking, yes, of course, to some extent, language is the same. But spoken English, we use lots of phrasal verb, the idiomatic phrases, as you teach every day.
Well, to address the elephant in the room, there is a certain racism that is present in Australia.
Yeah, there is.
There's no excuse for it, to be honest, but it's a reality, and it's a reality that's I think we can address it to some extent. As I noticed it, funnily enough, very late. I noticed it when I was already 25 or 26. That's when I started to notice the racism in Australia, which is actually, you do notice it, of course, when you go into country Australia, which I spent a little bit of my time in, but I didn't think that it was really systemic until later. There's definitely still some work to do as a culture, as a society. I don't know if there's a ceiling to this, whether there will be some improvement, but it will never be completely, abated. But I feel that racism is still very much a presence in Australia, even in the cities.
When I was working in Tokyo, I felt, I was hitting a glass ceiling. Okay, then try in Australia. Okay, so it's a much more
bigger altogether.
Yeah, I'm still searching for the best place.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we can cry about it. We can talk about it. But the reality is, we have to live in this world. So sometimes we just have to accept it. It's not ideal, is it? I mean, we can always run away from it. Like I've run away to some extent. I don't live in Australia anymore. I don't intend to. The thing is, and I've been looking for a place where I felt like I belonged more. And London was definitely more attractive to me for that reason. Like that multiculturalism that Australia espouses, and prides itself in, is more superficial than in London. London is much more international. That's how I felt. It still has its own problems,
of course,
on the same issue. But I did feel London was much more open as a society, as a culture. But then again, I was only there for a short time, and it's probably going to take, I don't know if it will happen at all, but I feel like America is probably where I actually belong right now. Like, even if we had to freeze time and see where I would thrive most, it might be America. I'm not sure.
That's interesting. But I think if I were a native English speaker, I would have tons of options. Yeah, of course, there is differences between accent, but still, the English is lingua franca. You can live, work everywhere you want. And you have such a privilege as an English native speaker.
That's true.
We can
in the current state of things, I mean, in the world's, English definitely opens doors. Well, Mel, we've gone through quite a lot of interesting topics. We only started with one phrase. We didn't even get to the next phrase, but I think we should come to a close. And maybe I didn't put this to you earlier, but maybe you can share, and you have already shared, your own journey in terms of your English learning, what you've been doing. Maybe you have. Maybe we can finish with some advice or a tip from you to the audience who are either moving, in their English learning journey, trying to get to that C1, C2 level. If you have any advice or tips, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I'm still on the English learning journey, aiming to achieve C2 level. What would I say? I think it's, what I realized is that the speaking English and writing English, including academic English, is almost different, completely different thing. So you have to delve into which aspect you are working on it right now. So with this activity, which aspect I can improve my skills? Because it's often, because I definitely overlooked the muscle training part of my pronunciation. It's fluency. And this is my weakness. I realized that. So that's why I came across your website to train my muscle. And then having a language partner is the easiest way to encourage you to speak English. You can do with a ChatGPT on your phone. I did. But yeah, we are human, and human are social creatures. So having a language partner, even they are random people, it's okay. And then they definitely encourage you. I met so many people joining from the US, Canada, Australia, from their own country. So, yeah, their life story is so inspiring.
Amazing, amazing. Well, it turns out that your advice and tip actually turned out to be a plug for our platform. So it wasn't intentional, but thank you for, it wasn't my intent to necessarily lead you to saying these things, but I appreciate it anyhow. So, and I also appreciate even more your time and your willingness to share your life stories with us. And yeah, I wanted to say thank you, and I hope that we can do this again. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me. This is my first experience of sharing my story in English.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thank you, and we should do it again. I'll tell the audience, please check out iSpeak.to if you want to participate in the conversation practice sessions. Thank you, everybody. And thank you again, Mel. Cheers.
Thank you.